For this Christmas placemat, I'm going to be using wash away stabiliser, my 5x7 hoop, gold thread with matching bobbin, and the bobbin has been wound from the spool, my scissors, my tape, I've got some pins on standby for when we join the parts together, my fabric scissors, my batting, and all my fabrics cut to size. Now the batting and the backing and the back fabrics are all cut to 6x6, and the front sections are cut to 3x4. This is going to be a reversible placemat, really pretty, and it's going to be joined, made and joined in 5 sections. The only thing that I have added that isn't in the list, and this is purely a personal choice, is some cutaway stabiliser, and I'm going to float that on top of the wash away. The reason being, once the wash away is no longer, I've still got some stabiliser there supporting the stitching. You don't have to do this, I just prefer to do it this way. I've hooped my wash away stabiliser, and I'm going to place my cutaway over the top. I've loaded file XPM01, which is for the 5x7 hoop. I've put my thread and bobbin thread into the machine, and there's not going to be any colour changes with regards to swapping bobbins and threads, which is really nice. So I'm now going to load this into my machine and stitch round number 1, which will give me my placement line, the outline. Now that that's stitched, I'll turn this over so that the back of my hoop is facing upwards, and I'm going to add the backing fabric, and I'm going to keep it in place with a piece of tape. I'll turn that over now, place my batting on top like so, making sure that it covers the outline. I'm just going to put a little bit of tape on here just so that it doesn't move while I stitch it, because it's quite slippery, this one. Okay, I'm now going to pop that in my machine and stitch round number 2, which will stitch the batting to the hoop and the backing to the hoop as well. Okay, what's happened is my foot has got caught up in my batting here because it's quite loose. So what I'm going to do is restitch that colour, but I'm going to put a piece of soft and sheer cutaway stabiliser over the top so that it can't get caught. You can see there I've got a piece of fine cutaway stabiliser, and I've just taped it over the top so that the foot can't get caught in the batting. It's a very loose batting, so I don't know if you can see that, you can actually see through it. So there's plenty of opportunity for the foot to get in there. When I stitch the next piece, I will put the cutaway stabiliser over the top of the batting rather than underneath it. It will do exactly the same job. It's now time to add the first piece of fabric, and it's going to go in this box at the top here. So I'm just going to lay that over like that, and I'm going to add a little bit of tape just to keep it in place while it stitches. I'm now going to pop that in my machine and stitch round number 3, which will secure it. I'm going to trim up this thread here, and I'm going to cut away a little piece of this fabric to remove the bulk, and I'm just going to remove, just leave a quarter of an inch like that, and then I can place my second fabric over here. Again, making sure I cover the whole of the outline there. And pop that in my machine and stitch round number 4. Okay, as before, I'm going to remove this thready and this piece of tape, cut away along here to within 1/4 of an inch, and then add my third fabric over the top of the bottom box. I'm now going to pop that in my machine and stitch round number 5. I'm going to remove all the tape and from the back as well. Okay. And trim all these little threadies. And now trim away all the excess fabric. Okay, I'm now going to pop it back into my machine and stitch round number 6, which is a zigzag stitch all around the edge. Next is round number 7, which is going to do the satin stitch all the way around the edge. Before we do, I'm just going to trim away that thread there. I'm now going to free it from the hoop. I'm doing it from the back. I'm not going to worry about any of the wash away showing because it will be removed at the end with some water and a Q-tip. Cotton bud. I don't know what you call it where you come from. I'm now going to trim up close to that stitch line there because that's going to be where we're going to join this piece to the next. So I want it as close as possible so that it fits neatly. And the same fit along here as well because that will be joined to the centre eventually. But I don't want to cut my stitch line there. 2 reasons. One, I don't want it coming apart, and secondly, it's going to be my guide for lining it up when it comes to doing the centre. Okay, so there's the first piece finished, and we're going to do the second piece in exactly the same way. So I'm going to hoop up my wash away stabiliser, pop it into my machine and stitch the outline. And turn my hoop over, and I'm going to place my second backing fabric over the outline and add some tape. I can turn that over. I'm going to place my batting down and I'm going to place my cutaway, and I'm just going to use soft and sheer throughout the whole of this over the top, and I'm just going to add a little piece of tape so that it doesn't slide around because it's quite slippery. I'm just going to trim this little bit off here just so that it doesn't get in my way. Okay. I'm now going to put that in my machine and stitch round number 2. I forgot to mention that I have loaded file XPM02 into my machine, which is the second in the sequence. I'm going to add my piece of fabric to the top box here. And I'm going to tape it in place. I'm now going to put that in my machine and stitch round number 3. I can now take that tape off. And I'm going to trim up along here to remove the bulk. Like that. And now I can add my next fabric. I'm going to take that in place. Oops. It's all stuck together. And that, because it's loose, is going to lift, so I'm just going to put some tape there. And I'm now going to put that in my machine and stitch round number 4. I can now remove that tape. And trim up the excess on here. Okay. And add my third piece of fabric. I'm now going to put that in my machine and stitch round number 5. Okay. I'm now going to remove my tape. I can remove the whole lot this time because I'm going to be trimming up all the excess fabric, batting and stabiliser. And that will be on the back as well as the front. I'm going to start with the back. And now time for the front. Okay, I'm now going to pop that back in my machine and I'm going to stitch round number 6, which is going to do the zigzag around the edge. We're now going to join the first piece that we made to the second, and it's going to join at the top here. After it's done, your machine's done the zigzag stitching, it's going to stop where you need to do the join, so you're always going to know which side of it's going to go. So what you're aiming to do is line up that line of stitching with this line of stitching over the top, and if you can align them perfectly up, then you'll have no trouble at all joining them. So I'm just popping a pin in there. If you use pins, make sure that they are nowhere near the line of stitching. Keep them well out of the way. I'm just using that to hold it securely, and then I put a bit of tape at the sides just to stop it from twisting. As you can see, it can twist there in the hoop while it's being stitched. Okay, I'm now going to pop that in my machine and stitch round number 7. The before I do round number 8, which is the satin stitch on top, I just want to show you here the fabric is poking out this side of that zigzag stitch, so I'm going to trim it back now so that when the satin stitch goes over the top it doesn't poke out and show. It's just where I didn't trim it back far enough before I joined it. And if I cut this zigzag stitch by accident, I can always do it again, just repeat the same round number 7. Okay, can you see that? It's right back to the stitch line now. I can now pop that back in my machine and stitch round number 8, which is the satin stitch that's going to go all the way round. I can now remove the tape and the pin, and I'm going to free this from the hoop. I like to put my fingers underneath between the stabilizer and my fabric there, just so that I don't catch it by mistake. Okay, that's the first half of our ring completed. I'm going to put that aside, and I'm now going to hoop for the third piece, and same as before. So I'm going to load file XPM03 into my machine ready, and then I will get on and hoop my stabilizer. I now pop that in my machine and stitch round number 1, which is the outline. I'll turn my hoop over, and as before, cover the outline and tape it down. And now I'll add my batting and my stabilizer over the top. It's picked up all the threads from my workbench here. Okay, I'm going to tape that down just so that it doesn't slide about. I'll pop that in my machine and stitch round number 2. Okay, time to add our fabric, and this time I'll be covering this bottom one here. Okay, I'm now going to pop that in my machine and stitch round number 3. And to remove the tape, and I'm going to trim up this edge here. And then add my next fabric. Now pop that in my machine and stitch round number 4. I've removed the tape and I'm just going to trim up along here now. Okay, I'm now going to add my next fabric. And tape it down. Okay, I'm going to put that in my machine and stitch round number 5. I'm going to trim it all up next. First of all, I'm going to remove the tape. Turn it over, and I'm going to start with the back. Okay, I'm now going to pop that back in my machine, and it's going to do the zigzag stitching, and that's round number 6. It will stop at the area at the bottom here where I will be adding the previous pieces to this one. It's now time to join our other piece to this. So as before, I'm going to use a pin to hold it in place with a bit of tape. And I'm trying to try and position it a little bit better this time so that I don't have the fabric poking through like I did last time. If it happens, you can either unpick it and redo it, or if it's just slight like it was when I joined the last piece, then I just tend to trim it up, to be quite truthful. Okay, so it's now time to stitch round number 7, and now round number 8. I remove the tape and the pin, and now I'm going to free this from my hoop. I'm just going to trim the edges up, ready to join with the next piece. That bit's okay, it's already been done. Just a little bit inside here. Okay, so that's our first 3 parts finished. Now time to hoop up for part number 4. I'm going to load file XPM04 into my machine before I start. Okay, so I'm going to hoop up, pop that in my machine and stitch round number 1 for the outline. I'll turn my hoop over, place my fabric down and tape it down. Next, I'll add my batting and my stabiliser on top. I'm now going to pop it back in my machine and stitch round number 2 to stitch it all down. I'm now going to add my fabric in this bottom box here. And tape it down. Now I'm going to pop that in my machine and stitch round number 3. I'm going to remove my tape. And trim back along this edge. I'm now going to add my next fabric and tape it down. I'm going to put that back in my machine and stitch round number 4. I'm going to remove my tape. Trim up my little thready there. And trim along this edge. And time to add the last fabric for this part and stick it down. Okay, I'm going to put that in my machine and stitch round number 5. And let's trim her up. Okay, and yet again I'm starting with the back. The reason why I start with the back is so that it doesn't get forgotten. I'm now going to put that back in my machine and stitch round number 6, which is the zigzag stitching. Now we're going to join other 3 parts to this. It's done exactly the same way as before, so I'm going to line that up, pin it and tape it, and I'm going to do the same for this side. The space is a bit tight in my hoop over this side, so I'm going to make sure that my pin goes as far over as I can possibly get it. I don't want that getting caught up in my needle. Okay, so I'm going to pop that back into my machine and I'm going to stitch around number 7, which is going to do this join. No, it's not. I'll tell a fib. It's going to do this join, then it's going to stitch round here, and then we'll join that one last. Okay, round number 8 is going to come round the curve, and round number 9 is going to join the last join on this hoop. And finally, round number 10 on this is the satin stitch. I'm going to remove the tape and the pins, and then I'm going to cut this free of the hoop. Okay, it's looking good. I'm now going to hoop again for the centre this time. So I'm going to load file XPM05 into my machine. Okay, let's get this hooped up. I'm now going to place my batting over the top of my outline and my stabiliser on top of that and my fabric on top of that. I'm going to stick my stabiliser down . Just make sure that this covers my outline, which it does. And I can add a little bit of tape to that as well, just to make sure that it doesn't move while it's stitching. I'm now going to pop that in my machine and stitch round number 2. Round number 3 is the stippling, but I'm not going to be stitching that, so I'm going to skip through to number 4, which is what they call the red work part of the file, and that'd be the Christmas tree in this case. Okay, that's a tree stitched. There's so many lovely choices in amongst these files that it's very difficult to decide which one to do for this stitch along. But I thought with snowmen the tree would be quite appropriate, so it was either that or the candy cane, and the tree one. Okay, I'm just trimming up the jump threads here just so that they don't get in my way. Okay, now I'm going to turn my hoop over and I'm going to trim up these few threads here just so that they don't annoy me. Okay, and I'm going to attach my back fabric. So as before, fabric over the outline and then tape it down. Okay, so I'm now going to pop that back in my machine, and I'm going to stitch round number 5, which is going to attach the back to the front. I'm going to remove the tape, both back and front. And trim all the excess fabric. And same for the front. Okay. Next we're going to attach this to the centre. And we want to once again to align the stitch lines with each other. Now I'm just going to make sure that my snowman at the top and bottom, and once again I'm going to pin this in place. Okay. I'm now going to pop that back in my machine and start stitching with round number 6, and it's going to work in quarters. And now round number 7 for the next quarter, and number 8 and number 9, and finally round number 10. Okay, we're now going to remove all the pins. Not quite like that, but there we go. Okay, so I've removed all the pins and I'm about to free it from the hoop. I just wanted to talk a little bit about if you end up with pieces showing through your satin stitch. There is a little trick. If it's just a little bit, take a pen the same colour, preferably a permanent marker, the same colour as your fabric or threads, and just gently go round and colour them in. Nobody will notice them. Okay, let's free this from the hoop. Okay, so now all that remains to do is to get a cotton bud with some water and remove all the wash away stabiliser. It's lovely, isn't it? Okay, so I've got my water. I'm just going to go around the edge. And there it is. One beautiful reversible placemat. I hope you've enjoyed this stitch along. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to be notified of new videos as they come out. And thank you very much for joining me.